On Christmas Eve, while champagne toasts and golden laughter filled the mansion below, Elena Carter signed her divorce papers in the silence of her bedroom, ending 6 years of marriage to the most feared man in the city. But before she vanished into the snowy night, she left more than just her signature behind. Atop those documents sat a pregnancy test, positive. The child Marcus Vale never knew existed, a truth he would discover too late. Or would he? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story reaches. The mansion had never felt so cold. Elena Carter stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the master bedroom, watching fat snowflakes tumble through the amber glow of streetlights 3 stories below. Behind her, the king-sized bed lay untouched, as it had been for the past 8 months. Down the hall, behind ornate double doors, Marcus's private office hummed with the low murmur of male voices discussing things she'd learned long ago not to ask about. She was a ghost in her own home, a beautiful, expensive ghost. The Louis Vuitton luggage sat packed beside the door, 6 years of marriage reduced to 3 suitcases and a carry-on. She'd left the jewelry, all of it. The diamonds meant nothing when the man who'd given them couldn't remember the last time he'd looked her in the eyes. Her phone buzzed. The car service confirming pickup in 45 minutes. Flight to San Diego at 11:30. By morning, she'd be 3,000 miles away, staying with her college roommate who'd been begging her to leave for 2 years. "You're more decoration than wife," Simone had said during their last video call. When was the last time he asked how you were? Really asked? Elena couldn't remember. The divorce papers lay spread across the mahogany desk. Marcus's desk, technically, though he hadn't set foot in this bedroom since September. Her signature looked small and lonely on the designated lines. His spaces remained blank. She'd have them served to him tomorrow, once she was safely gone. Confrontation felt impossible. What was there left to say that silence hadn't already screamed? The party below crescendoed. Someone had turned up the music. Feliz Navidad blared through the heating vents. Elena almost laughed. There was nothing feliz about this Navidad. Nothing merry about a marriage ending on the night when the whole world pretended to believe in miracles. She pressed her palm against the cold window glass. Somewhere out there was a life she'd abandoned to become Mrs. Marcus Vale, a teaching degree she'd never used, friends who'd stopped calling after the 3rd declined invitation, a mother who'd died thinking her daughter had found a fairy tale. If only she could have seen the truth. Fairy tales didn't ignore you for days at a time, didn't forget your birthday 3 years running, didn't look through you at breakfast as if you were just another piece of furniture in a house filled with priceless things. The bathroom door stood ajar. Inside, fluorescent light spilled across marble tile. Elena's gaze fixed on the vanity where she'd left it that morning, the pregnancy test with its 2 undeniable pink lines. 3 weeks late, 2 home tests, 1 devastating confirmation. She was carrying Marcus Vale's child, and he didn't even know she existed. The irony tasted bitter. For 4 years she'd wanted this, had imagined telling him over candlelit dinners, watching his face transform with joy. She'd pictured him as a father, imagined their children running through this enormous house, filling it with the warmth it so desperately lacked. But that fantasy required a husband who was present, a man who saw her as more than an obligation managed by his accountant through monthly deposits into her personal account. The money had never mattered. She'd have lived in a studio apartment if it meant having him, the real him, the man she'd fallen in love with 7 years ago at that gallery opening, the one who'd talked about Rothko for an hour, who'd walked her home in the rain, who'd promised her the world and actually meant their world, not this gilded cage. That Marcus was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed. Maybe she'd loved a performance, and the truth was this: a man who built empires in shadow had no room in his heart for anything soft. Elena walked to the desk, her heels silent on Persian carpet that cost more than most people's cars. She picked up the pregnancy test, its plastic casing still faintly warm from her touch that morning. For a long moment she simply held it, feeling the weight of impossible choices. She could tell him, watch his expression shift through confusion to calculation. Listen to him ask if she was sure, if she'd seen a doctor, what she planned to do. Questions that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with logistics. Another problem for Marcus Vale to manage: delegate control. Or she could leave it here, a truth bomb on a timer. Evidence of what he'd lost through sheer neglect. The decision made itself. Elena placed the test carefully atop the divorce papers, the two pink lines facing up like an accusation. Let him find it. Let him understand for once what it felt like to be too late. To realize something precious had slipped away while he'd been too busy building his empire to notice its foundation crumbling. She turned away before grief could change her mind. The bedroom door opened with a whisper. The hallway stretched empty in both directions. Marcus's office to the left, the grand staircase to the right. Below, the party had reached fever pitch. She recognized the voices. Anthony Chen from the construction union, probably discussing the waterfront development. Samuel Torres, whose trucking company had expanded aggressively over the past 2 years. Dmitry Volkov, who'd flown in from New York for reasons no one explained to her. The players in Marcus's world, the men who commanded his attention, his time, his loyalty. Never her. Elena descended the stairs with her luggage, each step taking her further from the life she'd tried so hard to love. The marble foyer gleamed with Christmas extravagance. A 15-foot tree dripping with crystal ornaments, garlands wrapped around banisters, mistletoe hung with optimistic irony above doorways where no kisses would happen. She'd decorated it herself 3 weeks ago. Marcus had been in Chicago. He'd returned to find it done and simply nodded, already on his phone. Mrs. Vale? Elena turned to find Maria, the housekeeper, emerging from the kitchen with concern etched deep in her weathered face. The older woman had been with Marcus for 15 years, longer than Elena, certainly. She'd seen everything, said nothing, but her eyes held understanding that needed no words. I'm leaving, Maria. Elena's voice came out steadier than expected. For good. Maria's hands twisted in her apron. Does Mr. Vale? He will soon enough. Elena managed to smile. Thank you. For everything. For trying to make this place feel like a home. Mija. The word carried a world of sympathy. Maria stepped forward, pulling Elena into an unexpected embrace. You deserve to be seen, to be cherished. Don't forget that. The kindness nearly broke her. Elena held on for 3 heartbeats, then pulled away before tears could fall. Take care of him, she whispered, though she wasn't sure why. What did it matter now? The front door opened onto winter night. Her driver, a man she'd seen 100 times but whose name she'd never learned, because she'd never thought to ask, because Marcus's world had taught her that staff were invisible, stood beside the black Mercedes, ready to ferry her away from this life. She was halfway down the steps when the door behind her exploded open. Elena! She froze. That voice. It still had power, even now, especially now. Marcus Vale stood framed in golden light, his 6'2" frame radiating the controlled intensity that had first drawn her to him. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of smoke before a storm. He wore a Tom Ford suit like armor, every inch the king of his domain. And he was looking at her, truly looking, for the first time in months. Where are you going? His tone demanded answers, expected obedience. Elena turned slowly, refusing to let him see how his sudden attention affected her. Out? With luggage? His gaze dropped to her suitcases. On Christmas Eve? I wasn't aware you'd noticed what day it was. The words came out sharper than intended, but she didn't regret them. You're needed inside. I'm sure Mr. Chen is waiting. She moved toward the car. Marcus descended the steps in 3 long strides, his hand closing around her wrist. Not hard, never hard, but firm enough to stop her. We need to talk. No. Elena met his eyes, saw surprise flicker there. She never said no. Good wives didn't. We needed to talk 6 months ago, 3 months ago. Last Tuesday when I asked you to have dinner with me and you said you had a meeting. We needed to talk every single day you walked past me like I was invisible. That's not... He stopped, recalibrated. Come inside. Whatever this is, we can discuss it like adults. The audacity of it struck her breathless. Like adults? Marcus, I don't think you understand what's happening here. She pulled her wrist free, and he let her go, clearly thrown by her resistance. This isn't a discussion. This is done. What are you talking about? I left the papers on your desk, upstairs. In the bedroom you haven't entered since before Thanksgiving. She watched understanding dawn slowly. I'm filing for divorce. The words hung in the frozen air between them. Behind Marcus, the party continued, oblivious. Anthony Chen's laugh boomed through the open door. Inside that house, business went on. Deals were struck. Empires maintained. Out here, one was crumbling. "You can't be serious!" Marcus's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that made grown men nervous. It didn't touch her anymore. Fear required carrying what came next. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Elena, listen to me." "No, you listen." The words erupted from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd kept locked down for years. "I loved you. Did you know that? I loved you so much it terrified me. I would have done anything, been anything, gone anywhere. And you—" Her voice cracked, but didn't break. "You treated me like an acquisition, something you won and put on a shelf to admire occasionally when you remembered I existed. That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" She laughed, the sound jagged. "I spent 6 years making excuses for you, telling myself you were busy, that building what you built took sacrifice, that you showed love differently. I lied to myself every single day because admitting the truth meant admitting I'd made a mistake." "This is about the fundraiser last month." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I explained, this is about every event, Marcus. Every dinner party where you introduced me as your wife and then ignored me for 3 hours. Every holiday you worked through. Every anniversary you forgot. Every time you looked through me instead of at me." She felt tears threaten but blinked them back. "This is about coming home to an empty house, even when you're in it." Something shifted in his expression, confusion giving way to something she couldn't quite read. "If you'd told me you were unhappy—" "I told you," the words ripped out. "I told you 100 different ways. I asked for date nights. I suggested we take a vacation. I tried talking about having a family, and you nodded and said soon and after this deal closes, and when things settle down." Her voice steadied into something cold and final. "Things never settle down for you, Marcus. There's always another deal, another crisis, another reason why everything else can wait, including me. I was protecting you." "From what?" "Knowing you, being part of your life." She shook her head. "You don't protect something by locking it away and forgetting about it." The driver had tactfully retreated to the car, giving them space. Snow fell heavier now, catching in Marcus's dark hair, dusting the shoulders of his expensive suit. He looked, Elena realized, genuinely lost, as if the script he'd always followed suddenly made no sense. "Tell me what you need," he said finally. "Whatever it is, I needed you." Simple. Devastating. "I needed a husband, not a ghost. I needed conversation and connection and actual presence. I needed to matter more than your next acquisition." She picked up her carry-on. "But you can't give me that, because you don't know how. And I can't keep dying slowly in a beautiful house, waiting for someone who's never coming home." "Where will you go?" The question surprised her. The first thing he'd asked that suggested he saw her as a person with plans, with agency, with a life beyond these walls. "Somewhere far from here. Somewhere I can remember who I was before I became Mrs. Marcus Vale." She turned toward the car again. This time he didn't stop her, but his voice followed. "The papers. I'll need time to review them with my attorney." Of course. Even this had to be managed, strategized, controlled. Elena looked back one last time, memorizing him standing there in the snow, powerful and alone, exactly what he'd chosen to be. "There's something else on the desk," she said quietly. "You should probably look at that before you call your lawyer." Confusion flickered across his face. "What are you—" But she was already in the car, the door closing with a solid thunk that sounded like finality. The Mercedes pulled away smoothly, carrying her down the circular driveway, past the fountain she'd always thought was too ostentatious, through the gates that had felt like prison bars for longer than she wanted to admit. She didn't look back. Behind her, Marcus Vale stood in the falling snow, watching his wife disappear into the night, holding a question he couldn't answer and a warning he didn't yet understand. Inside, the party continued. Business called. Dmitry Volkov was waiting to discuss the port situation. Anthony Chen needed a decision on the labor contracts. His empire demanded attention. But for the first time in years, Marcus found himself not caring. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The master bedroom door stood open. She'd left it that way deliberately, he realized. An invitation to see what he'd been avoiding. The divorce papers lay exactly where she'd said, spread across his desk in accusatory precision. Her signature looked so final, so determined. He picked up the top page, scanning language he'd seen 1,000 times in other contexts. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, mutual release of claims. His marriage, reduced to legal boilerplate. Then he saw it. The pregnancy test lay atop the final page like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. 2 pink lines stark against white plastic. Marcus stared at it, his mind refusing to process what his eyes clearly showed. Pregnant. Elena was pregnant, with his child. The papers slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, scattering across expensive carpet. Marcus sank into the desk chair, the pregnancy test still in his hand, and felt the careful architecture of his controlled world begin to crack. She'd been carrying his child, walking around this house for how long? Weeks? Knowing she was pregnant and planning to leave, planning to raise their baby alone rather than stay in this marriage one more day. The mathematics of that devastation hit him like a physical blow. She'd chosen anything over staying with him, including single motherhood, including raising their child without his name, his protection, his resources. That's how unbearable he'd made her life. That's how completely he'd failed. Marcus looked around the bedroom with new eyes. The unused bed. The closet still full of her clothes, organized by color. The nightstand on her side where a book lay open, bookmark holding her place in a story he'd never asked about. The fresh flowers in the vase by the window, she'd been putting fresh flowers there every week for 6 years, and he'd never once commented on them. Evidence of a life he'd ignored, a woman he'd taken for granted, a love he'd let wither through sheer neglect. Dios mío. Maria stood in the doorway, her face a map of sorrow. She'd seen the test, understood what it meant. How long have you known? Marcus's voice came out rough. I suspected for a few weeks. She's been tired, emotional. But she didn't tell me. Maria's eyes held reproach. She had no one to tell, Mr. Vale. You made sure of that. The accusation landed clean. He had done exactly that. Insulated her, isolated her, reduced her world to this house and its empty rooms while he built empires that meant nothing if he came home to this silence. She's going to San Diego. Maria's voice softened. To her college friend Simone. The flight leaves at 11:30. Marcus checked his watch, 10:15. 45 minutes if traffic was good, longer in snow. He could make it. Could catch her before she boarded. Could... What? Say what exactly? That he was sorry. Sorry didn't cover 6 years of emotional abandonment. That he'd change? She'd heard that before, probably, in moments he couldn't even remember. That he loved her? When was the last time he'd said it? Meant it with action instead of assumption? What should I do? The question came out desperate, revealing weakness he never showed. But Maria had earned his trust over 15 years. If anyone could tell him the truth, she could. You should ask yourself a different question, Mr. Vale. Maria met his eyes steadily. Not what you should do, but who you want to be. The man who lets her go because it's easier than changing? Or the man who fights for his family, even if he has to burn down everything he built to do it? She left him there, alone with the wreckage of his marriage and the truth he'd been avoiding. Marcus stood, pocketed the pregnancy test, and looked at the divorce papers one more time. Elena's signature, the space where his should go. Downstairs, his associates waited. Anthony Chen needed an answer on the labor situation. Dimitri had flown in specifically for this meeting. Samuel Torres was expecting commitments. His entire network depended on his presence, his decisions, his control. His empire demanded its king, but his wife, his pregnant wife, was walking away. For 6 years, Marcus had chosen the empire. Every time, without question. It had seemed obvious, necessary, the price of the power that protected them both. But standing here in this empty bedroom, holding evidence of the child he'd created and nearly lost, the choice suddenly looked different. The empire had given him everything, and cost him the only thing that actually mattered. Marcus walked to the closet, stripped off the Tom Ford suit, and changed into jeans and a sweater, clothes he wore so rarely that Elena probably didn't remember buying them. He wasn't going to the airport as Marcus Vale, feared kingpin and power broker. He was going as a man trying to save his family. The office door stood open. Inside, voices rose in impatient question. Anthony appeared in the hallway, expression annoyed. "Marcus, we've been waiting." "Cancel it." Marcus headed for the stairs. "What? We can't cancel. Dimitri flew in from... Then he can fly back." Marcus didn't slow down. "Tell everyone the meeting's off. Indefinitely." "You can't be serious. The port situation will wait." Marcus grabbed his keys from the foyer table. "Or it won't. Either way, I'm not handling it tonight." Anthony's face cycled through confusion to understanding to something like concern. "Where are you going?" "To fix the biggest mistake of my life." Marcus pulled open the front door. "If I'm lucky." He left Anthony standing there, mouth open, and climbed into his Aston Martin, the car he'd bought to impress her 7 years ago, the car he hadn't driven in months because he'd been too busy being driven to meetings that suddenly seemed catastrophically unimportant. The engine roared to life. Snow swirled in the headlights. Marcus Vale, who controlled more illicit territory than any man in 3 states, who made decisions that affected thousands of lives, who'd built an empire on calculated risks and perfect timing, pressed the accelerator and drove into the night with absolutely no plan beyond one desperate truth. He couldn't let her go. He wouldn't. Not without a fight. Not without proving that somewhere underneath the king he'd become, the man she'd fallen in love with still existed. Not without showing her that this time, finally, devastatingly too late, but still, he was choosing her. The airport loomed ahead, bright and bustling with holiday travelers. Marcus abandoned his car in a no-parking zone, threw money at a startled attendant, and ran through automatic doors into chaos and crowds, and the last chance he had to save his marriage. Gate 47, San Diego, 11:30 departure. He had 15 minutes. The airport terminal pulsed with the frantic energy of holiday travel. Families clustered around departure boards, children whining about delays, couples arguing over gate numbers. The PA system crackled with announcements in 3 languages. Somewhere a baby screamed. Christmas music played tinnily through overhead speakers, competing with the roar of jet engines beyond plate glass windows. Marcus pushed through the crowd, his height giving him advantage as he scanned faces, searching for the only one that mattered. Gate 47 sat at the far end of Terminal B, a quarter-mile of polished floor, and humanity between him and his last chance. His phone buzzed insistently. Anthony, then Dimitri, then Samuel, the Empire calling, demanding attention, furious at being abandoned mid-negotiation. Marcus silenced it without looking. The security line snaked back 50 yards, families loaded down with wrapped presents and oversized carry-ons. No time. Marcus spotted a TSA supervisor, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. "I need to get through," he said, not bothering with pretense. "My wife is leaving. Gate 47. I have 15 minutes. The supervisor looked him up and down, jeans, sweater, desperation bleeding through every pore. "You got a ticket?" "No." "Then you can't." Marcus pulled out his wallet, extracted $500 bills, and pressed them into her hand. "Please, I'm begging you. She's pregnant and she doesn't know I know, and if I don't catch her before she boards..." His voice cracked. "I'll lose everything." Something in his face must have convinced her. Or maybe she was just a romantic underneath the bureaucratic armor. The supervisor pocketed the money, grabbed his arm, and pulled him toward a side door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." 2 minutes, she said, punching in a code. "That's all I can give you. You cause a scene, you're on your own." "Thank you." Marcus squeezed through the opening door. "Thank you so much." "Merry Christmas," the supervisor called after him. "Now go get your girl." The secured side of the terminal was less crowded, but still bustling. Marcus ran, his dress shoes slapping against polished floor, dodging slow-moving travelers and luggage carts. Gate 40. Gate 43. Gate 45. There. Gate 47. The boarding area was half empty, most passengers already through the jetway. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs as he scanned the remaining faces. Business travelers on laptops, a teenager with headphones, an elderly couple holding hands. No Elena. Panic clawed at his chest. He'd missed her. She was already on the plane, already gone, already... Then he saw her. She stood at the window, silhouetted against the darkness beyond, one hand pressed to the glass, as if she could push through it and fly away on her own. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders. She'd taken it down from the updo she'd worn at the house. Even from behind, Marcus could see the tension in her spine, the way her shoulders curved inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. He'd done that to her, made her feel like she needed to disappear. Marcus approached slowly, each step feeling like walking into fire. What did he say? How did he make her understand that in the space of 45 minutes, his entire world had reordered itself around a truth he should have recognized years ago? Elena. She went rigid. For a long moment, she didn't turn, didn't move, just stood there like a statue carved from ice and grief. When she finally faced him, her expression was carefully blank, the mask she'd learned to wear in his world, where showing emotion meant giving away power. What are you doing here? Her voice matched her face, neutral, detached. I read the papers. Then you know why I left. I found the test. The words came out rougher than intended. The pregnancy test. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, that he'd mention it, that he cared enough to mention it. That changes nothing. It changes everything. For you, maybe. Elena turned back to the window. For me, it just makes leaving harder, but I'm still leaving. Marcus moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch, not to crowd. Outside, ground crew swarmed around the plane, loading luggage, checking equipment. Normal people doing normal work, unaware that his entire life was collapsing in this airport gate. How far along? He asked quietly. 8 weeks. Almost 9. She kept her gaze on the tarmac. I found out 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you tell me? She laughed, the sound bitter. When, Marcus? Between your meeting with the construction union and your call with the Port Authority? Maybe during the 30 seconds we were in the same room last Thursday? Or should I have scheduled an appointment through your assistant? The sarcasm cut clean. He'd earned every word. I would have made time. Would you? Now she looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was devastating. Really? Because I've been trying to get your attention for 6 months, and the only thing that worked was signing divorce papers and walking out the door. I know. The admission cost him. You're right. About all of it. I don't want to be right, Marcus. Her voice broke slightly. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted there to be some explanation that made sense. Some reason you'd turned into a stranger. But there isn't, is there? This is just who you are now. No. He risked touching her arm, felt her stiffen, but not pull away. This is who I became, but it's not who I have to be. People don't change. They do if they have a reason. Marcus turned her gently to face him, relieved when she didn't resist. You're my reason. You and... He gestured toward her still flat stomach. Our baby. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She blinked back furiously. Don't do this. Don't make promises you can't keep. I can't survive being disappointed by you again. Then don't let me disappoint you. The desperation leaked through despite his best efforts. Come home. Give me a chance to prove I can be different. I did give you chances. Dozens of them. And you chose your empire every single time. I was wrong. Saying it means nothing. The words burst out, drawing glances from nearby passengers. Elena lowered her voice, but the intensity remained. You're good at words, Marcus. You've always been good at words. It's the actions that fall short. The final boarding call crackled over the speakers. Elena's flight, her escape route. Marcus felt time compressing, felt his window closing. You're right, he said. Words are cheap, so here's an action. I left my associates in the middle of the most important meeting of the quarter. Dmitry Volkov flew in from New York specifically for tonight. Anthony Chen threatened to walk if I didn't close the labor deal. And I told them all to wait, because none of it matters if you get on that plane. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. One grand gesture doesn't erase 6 years. I know, but it's a start. Marcus took her hands, felt them trembling. Elena, I have been a terrible husband, absent, neglectful, so focused on building something I thought would protect us that I destroyed the very thing I was trying to protect. You deserve better. You deserve better. And I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I swear to you, I will never make you feel invisible again. How can I believe that? Because I'm terrified. The confession came from somewhere deep and honest. I have faced down federal investigations and hostile takeovers and men who would kill me without blinking, and none of it scared me like the thought of losing you, of our child growing up without knowing their father, of you out there somewhere, happy without me. His voice dropped to a whisper. That's the nightmare I can't survive. A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm tired of being alone in a marriage, tired of making excuses, tired of hoping for scraps of your attention. Then stop hoping. He wiped the tear away with his thumb. Demand it, all of it. My time, my presence, my focus. Hold me accountable. Don't let me slip back into old patterns. Last call for flight 1847 to San Diego. All passengers should be on board. Elena looked toward the jetway, then back at Marcus. He could see the war in her eyes, the part that wanted to believe battling the part that couldn't risk another betrayal. I need more than promises, she said finally. I need proof. Real change. Not just today because you're panicked, but tomorrow and next week and 6 months from now. Then give me 2 weeks. The number came from instinct, from the sense that he had to offer something concrete. Come home. Let me prove I mean this. If after 2 weeks you still want to leave, I won't fight the divorce. I'll sign the papers, set you up anywhere you want to go, make sure you and the baby have everything you need. But please, his voice roughened, please don't leave on Christmas Eve without giving me a chance to fight for us. 2 weeks of what? Of me being present, actually present, of conversations and dinners and showing you that I remember how to be a husband. Marcus squeezed her hands. I can't change the past, but I can change what happens next, if you let me. The gate agent appeared, looking impatient. Ma'am, we need to close the door. Are you boarding? Elena stood at the crossroads, literal and metaphorical. Behind her, the plane waited to carry her to safety, to distance, to a fresh start without the weight of failed hopes. Ahead, Marcus stood offering salvation that might just be another beautifully packaged disappointment. 2 weeks, she said slowly, but with conditions. Relief flooded through him. Anything. No meetings after 6 p.m., no working on weekends. We have dinner together every night, and you put your phone away. Actually away, not just face down on the table. Her eyes hardened. And you tell me the truth. About your business, about the risks, about why you've been so distant. No more walls. The conditions were impossible. His world didn't work on schedules. Emergencies didn't respect dinner time. And the truth about his empire, the real truth, was exactly what he'd spent 6 years protecting her from. But looking at her standing there, one hand unconsciously resting on her stomach where their child grew, Marcus realized he'd been protecting the wrong thing all along. Okay, he said. All of it. Complete transparency. Ma'am? The gate agent's patience was evaporating. I'm not boarding. Elena's voice shook but held firm. Cancel my reservation, please. The relief nearly buckled Marcus's knees. He pulled Elena into his arms, felt her resist for half a second before melting against him. She fit perfectly, exactly as she had 7 years ago when this all began. How had he forgotten that? How had he let her become a stranger in his own house? Thank you, he whispered into her hair. I won't waste this chance. You'd better not. But her arms tightened around him. Because this is it, Marcus. Last chance. If you break my heart again, I'm gone and you'll never find me. I understand. They stood there while other passengers flowed around them, while the plane pushed back from the gate, while Christmas music played and the world continued its indifferent spin. Marcus felt something in his chest loosen, some knot that had been tightening for years without him noticing. His phone buzzed again. Anthony, probably, or Dmitri demanding explanations. Marcus silenced it without looking and took Elena's hand. Let's go home, he said. The drive back was quiet, tension replacing relief as reality set in. 2 weeks. He'd bought himself 2 weeks to prove he could be the man she needed. But how did he dismantle 6 years of patterns in 14 days? How did he show her consistency when his entire life was controlled chaos? The mansion loomed ahead, still blazing with lights. Cars filled the circular driveway. His associates hadn't left, Marcus realized. They were waiting, probably furious, definitely confused about why their normally unshakable leader had abandoned them mid-deal. Elena noticed too. "Your meeting. Can wait." Marcus parked the Aston Martin, came around to open her door. "You're more important." They flew in from... I don't care if they flew in from Mars. He helped her out, kept hold of her hand. "I meant what I said. No meetings after 6. It's almost midnight. They shouldn't be here." Inside, the foyer was empty, but voices carried from the study. Marcus led Elena toward the stairs, hoping to avoid confrontation, but Anthony emerged before they could escape. "There you are!" Anthony's voice was tight with controlled anger. "We've been waiting for 3 hours. Dimitri is furious. Samuel left. The port situation is about to..." "Anthony," Marcus cut him off. "I apologize for the disruption, but the meeting is canceled. Permanently." "What are you talking about? We can't..." "Yes, we can." Marcus positioned himself between Anthony and Elena. "Whatever you need decided can wait until Monday, until business hours, until I'm not trying to save my marriage." Anthony's gaze flicked to Elena, understanding dawning. "This is about her? Marcus, be reasonable. The waterfront development alone is worth nothing." The word came out flat and final. "It's worth nothing if I lose her. So you can wait, or you can walk. Your choice." The silence stretched. Anthony had been with Marcus for 8 years, since the early days when the empire was just ambition and careful planning. They'd built this together, made decisions that affected thousands of lives, created something that ran on precision timing and absolute commitment, and Marcus was threatening to blow it all up for a woman. "You're making a mistake," Anthony said quietly. "A sentimental mistake." "Maybe." Marcus didn't flinch. "But it's my mistake to make." Anthony looked at Elena one more time, something like pity in his eyes. Then he turned and walked back toward the study, shoulders rigid with disapproval. Elena had gone pale. "Marcus, if this costs you, it won't cost me anything I can't afford to lose." He guided her upstairs, away from the voices and judgment. The Empire survived before Anthony. It'll survive if he walks. But would it? That was the question neither of them asked as they reached the master bedroom. The divorce papers still lay scattered on the carpet, evidence of how close they'd come to ending everything. Marcus gathered them carefully, torn between destroying them immediately and keeping them as a reminder of what he'd almost lost. "I should burn these," he said. "No." Elena took them from his hands, walked to the desk, and locked them in the bottom drawer. "Keep them. As insurance for me. And motivation for you." Smart. She wasn't trusting him blindly. Good. He didn't deserve blind trust. Elena moved through the bedroom like a ghost, touching surfaces she'd touched 1,000 times before. The flowers on the windowsill, wilting now, since she'd planned to be gone. The book on her nightstand, bookmarks still holding her place. The closet where her clothes hung in organized rows, each piece selected to be appropriate for a crime boss's wife. Elegant, expensive, forgettable. "I need to know something," she said, not looking at him. "The distance, the walls. Was it another woman?" The question punched the air from his lungs. "No, never. Elena, I swear." "Then what?" She turned, and the vulnerability in her face made him ache. "What made you stop seeing me?" This was it. The truth she'd demanded, the transparency she'd made him promise. Marcus could lie, could offer a sanitized version that protected them both. But he'd given his word. "Fear," he said simply. "Of what?" "Of exactly what's happening right now." Marcus crossed to her, needed her to see his face when he explained. "Elena, my world is dangerous. You've always known that, but I've worked hard to keep the reality away from you. The men I deal with, they're not businessmen playing at being tough. They're predators. And the higher I climbed, the bigger the target on my back became. I knew the risks when I married you." "No, you knew the idea of risk. You didn't know the specifics." He took her hands, forced himself to continue. 3 years ago, one of my associates, a man I'd worked with for years, tried to have me killed. Not in some elaborate, dramatic way. Just a simple hit, clean and efficient. He failed, obviously, but I found out later that his backup plan was you. If he couldn't get to me, he'd take you, make me watch you die, and then finish me off. Elena's face went white. "Marcus, I handled it permanently. But it taught me something. As long as people saw how much you mattered to me, you were a weapon they could use. His voice dropped. So I made sure no one saw it. I created distance. Made it look like our marriage was just a formality, a social arrangement. Made you seem unimportant to me. That's... She pulled her hands free, stepped back. That's insane. That's survival in my world. And you never thought to tell me? To let me decide if I wanted that kind of protection? Would you have accepted it? The question hung between them. Elena's eyes blazed with anger, but underneath Marcus saw understanding struggling to emerge. She was smart enough to realize that if she'd known the truth, she might have played her role too well, might have convinced herself the distance was real, exactly what had happened anyway. You should have trusted me, she said finally. I know. I should have trusted us. Marcus moved closer, giving her space to retreat if she needed. But I was so focused on keeping you safe that I forgot you needed more than safety. You needed a husband, and I failed at that completely. Who was he? Elena's voice steadied. The man who threatened me. Does it matter? He's gone. It matters to me. Steel entered her tone. If I'm going to be transparent with you, you need to be transparent with me. No more protecting me from the truth. That was the deal. Marcus studied her face, saw determination he'd missed before. Or maybe it had always been there and he'd simply stopped looking. His wife wasn't fragile. She'd survived 6 years in his world, survived his neglect, survived carrying a secret pregnancy while planning to raise their child alone. She was stronger than he'd given her credit for. Vincent Lazaro, he said. He ran the North Shore territory. We'd been partners for 4 years. And now? And now he's no longer a problem. The flatness in Marcus's voice told her everything she needed to know. That's the world I live in, Elena. That's what I've kept you away from. She absorbed this, her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach. Our baby. Will they be a target too? Not if I do this right. Marcus had been thinking about this since the moment he'd seen that pregnancy test. I'm going to start transitioning out, legitimizing the empire, or at least my part in it. It'll take time, maybe a year, maybe 2, but I can build something that doesn't make our child a weapon against me. That's possible? It has to be. He reached for her, was grateful when she didn't pull away. Because I won't raise my kid the way I was raised. Always looking over my shoulder, never trusting anyone, building walls so high that I forget how to let people in. Elena leaned into him, exhaustion finally catching up. This is a lot to process. I know. And we don't have to solve it all tonight. Marcus guided her toward the bed. Right now you need rest. You're carrying our baby. That matters more than my empire or Vincent Lazaro's ghost or any of it. She kicked off her shoes, suddenly looking fragile in a way that terrified him. I'm still angry at you. You should be. And I don't fully trust you yet. I'll earn it back. 2 weeks, Marcus. She met his eyes. That's what you promised. But I need you to understand, I'm not measuring grand gestures. I'm measuring consistency. The small moments. Whether you remember to ask about my day, whether you're actually present when we're in the same room. I understand. Elena crawled under the covers, still fully dressed. Marcus hesitated, unsure where he fit in this new dynamic. For 8 months, he'd slept in the guest room, maintaining the distance he'd thought kept her safe. But now, stay, she said quietly. Not because everything's fixed, but because I don't want to be alone tonight. He changed quickly and slid into bed beside her, careful to maintain space, to respect boundaries. But Elena surprised him by curling against his side, her head on his chest, exactly as she'd done 7 years ago when they'd first fallen in love. Marcus wrapped his arm around her, felt her breathing slow and steady. Outside, the Christmas party had finally ended. Voices faded, car engines started and pulled away. Dimitri and Anthony and all the rest, leaving with their questions unanswered and their deals undone. For the first time in 6 years, Marcus didn't care. His phone buzzed one last time. He picked it up, saw Anthony's name, and made a decision that would have been impossible 24 hours ago. He powered it down completely and set it on the nightstand, face down. In the morning, there would be consequences. Angry associates, missed opportunities, the empire demanding attention it wouldn't receive. But morning was hours away. Right now, Elena slept in his arms, their baby growing inside her, and his marriage balanced on a knife's edge between salvation and collapse. Marcus closed his eyes and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Maybe he could do this. Maybe 2 weeks would be enough to prove himself. Maybe the man Elena had fallen in love with wasn't completely lost underneath the empire builder he'd become. Or maybe he was fooling himself. Maybe patterns carved over 6 years couldn't be broken in 14 days. Maybe she'd wake up remembering all the reasons she'd signed those divorce papers in the first place. The uncertainty should have terrified him. Instead, lying there in the darkness with his wife's steady breathing anchoring him to something real, Marcus felt the first stirrings of peace. He'd spent 6 years choosing power over presence, building an empire while his marriage crumbled, protecting Elena from external threats while becoming the biggest threat to her happiness himself. But she was here, still giving him a chance he absolutely didn't deserve. He wouldn't waste it. Outside, snow continued falling on Christmas morning, blanketing the city in white. Inside the mansion where business deals were normally negotiated and empires maintained, a different kind of transformation began. Quieter, more fragile, but infinitely more important. Marcus Vale, who'd built his life on control and careful calculation, surrendered to something he couldn't manage or manipulate. The terrifying vulnerability of loving someone more than power, more than safety, more than the empire he'd sacrificed everything to build. And for the first time in years, he fell asleep not as a king, but as a man trying desperately to become worthy of the second chance he'd been given. Marcus woke to unfamiliar sunlight streaming through bedroom windows he hadn't looked at in months. For a disoriented moment, he couldn't place what felt different. Then awareness crystallized. Elena's warmth beside him, her breathing soft and steady, one hand resting protectively over her stomach, even in sleep. Christmas morning. The first in 6 years he hadn't woken alone. His phone sat dark and silent on the nightstand where he'd left it powered down. The urge to check it was instinctive, overwhelming. 8 hours of messages probably waited, crises that needed managing, associates demanding explanations. His thumb hovered over the power button. Don't. Elena's voice, still rough with sleep. She hadn't opened her eyes. You promised. Marcus set the phone down. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. Now she looked at him, and despite the softness of morning, her gaze was sharp. I could feel you thinking about it. He had no defense because she was right. 6 years of habits didn't evaporate overnight. Sorry. Don't apologize. Just don't do it. Elena sat up, pushing dark hair from her face. What time is it? Almost 9. That late? She looked surprised. I never sleep past 7. You were exhausted. Marcus resisted the urge to reach for her. You and the baby needed rest. The mention of their child brought Elena's hand to her stomach again, a gesture he suspected she didn't realize she was making. I should see a doctor. Get proper prenatal care. I've been taking vitamins, but I haven't had an actual appointment yet. We'll find the best OB/GYN in the city. Marcus sat up, mind already cataloging specialists. I can make some calls. Marcus. He stopped, caught himself. Right, no business mode. What do you want to do? I want to have breakfast with my husband. Elena slid out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Like normal people, and then maybe we can figure out the doctor situation together. Together. Such a simple word, but it landed with weight. Marcus nodded, following her lead. Downstairs, Maria had already prepared coffee and set out pastries despite the holiday. She took one look at them entering the kitchen together, really together, not just occupying the same space, and her weathered face creased into a smile that held relief and hope in equal measure. Merry Christmas, she said softly. Coffee, Mrs. Vale? Elena hesitated. Actually, do we have decaf? I should probably... Of course. Maria was already moving, pulling a different container from the cabinet. I bought some last week, just in case. The knowing look she gave Elena suggested the housekeeper had suspected the pregnancy before anyone else. Marcus felt a pang of guilt so sharp it stole his breath. Everyone in his household had been more attuned to his wife's condition than he had. They sat at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room, Elena's choice, and Marcus understood why. The dining room was where they'd hosted dozens of business dinners, where deals were made and alliances formed. The kitchen was simpler, more intimate. A place where a marriage might actually exist instead of just being performed. Tell me about the baby, Marcus said, wrapping his hands around his coffee mug to keep from checking his phone. What's it been like? The pregnancy? Elena stirred cream into her decaf, considering. Terrifying, mostly. I found out 3 weeks ago. Like I said, I took 4 tests because I couldn't believe it. We'd been so careful, and then when nothing happened for years, I assumed... She stopped. Well, I assumed you didn't want children with me. The accusation was matter-of-fact, no heat behind it, which somehow made it worse. That was never true. How was I supposed to know? We never talked about it. Every time I brought up the future, you changed the subject. Because talking about the future meant admitting how badly I was handling the present. Marcus set down his mug. I know that's not an excuse. I'm just trying to explain. So explain. Elena met his eyes. You said you'd be transparent. Start now. Why did bringing up kids make you uncomfortable? The honest answer required excavating things Marcus had buried deliberately. But he'd promised, and promises to Elena suddenly felt sacred in a way business commitments never had. My father was a violent drunk who beat my mother until she stopped fighting back, he said quietly. I was 12 when she finally left, took my sister and disappeared in the middle of the night, left me behind because I reminded her too much of him. He watched Elena's expression shift to horror. So when you talked about having children, all I could think about was that cycle. That maybe violence and absence were genetic. Maybe I'd turn into him no matter how hard I tried not to. Marcus, I know it's irrational. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally? He shook his head. I was terrified of becoming a father because I had no idea how to be a good one. Only how to be a terrible one. Elena reached across the counter, laced her fingers through his. You're not your father. How can you be sure? Because your father wouldn't have chased me to the airport last night. Wouldn't have offered to dismantle his empire for his family. Wouldn't be sitting here trying to explain trauma he's clearly never talked about before. She squeezed his hand. You're not perfect, and you've made mistakes. But you're not him. The absolution felt unearned but desperately needed. Marcus held on to her hand like a lifeline. I want to be a good father to this baby. I want to do better than I've been doing. Then you will be. Elena's voice was soft but certain. The fact that you're worried about it means you care. That's already different. They sat in silence for a moment, the kitchen warm with morning light and fragile hope. Maria moved around them quietly, giving privacy while maintaining presence. Outside, the city was muffled with Christmas snow, peaceful in a way that felt temporary. Marcus's phone vibrated in his pocket. He'd slipped it in automatically despite leaving it powered down. Old habits. He ignored it, focused instead on Elena's face, memorizing details he'd stopped noticing. The small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood fall, the way she bit her lower lip when thinking, the gold flecks in her brown eyes that caught sunlight. What? She asked, catching him staring. I forgot how beautiful you are. You see me every day? No. I look at you every day. There's a difference. Marcus stood, came around the island. I forgot to actually see you. Elena turned on her stool, letting him step between her knees. This close, he could smell her shampoo. Something floral he'd bought without asking what she liked, just assuming expensive meant good. He knew nothing about her actual preferences anymore. What she read, what she dreamed about, whether she was happy. He was going to learn, all of it. What's your favorite flower? He asked. The question clearly surprised her. What? You put fresh flowers in the bedroom every week. I never asked what kind you prefer. Tell me. Peonies, she said slowly. Pink peonies. But they're only in season in late spring, so usually I just get whatever looks good. Peonies, got it. Marcus filed the information away. What else don't I know? Elena laughed, the sound startled and genuine. That's a very long list. We have 2 weeks. Start anywhere. She thought about it, a smile playing at her lips. I hate champagne. Everyone always assumes I love it because I drink it at your events, but it gives me headaches and tastes like expensive sadness. What do you actually like? Red wine, specifically Malbec, and whiskey, occasionally, when I'm not pregnant. She tilted her head. I also hate caviar. Think opera is boring. And I've been secretly taking Italian lessons online for 6 months because I want to travel to Tuscany someday. Each revelation felt like a gift and an indictment. His wife had dreams and preferences and a whole inner life he'd been oblivious to. Why Italian? Because my grandmother was from Florence, and I never got to meet her. She died before I was born. But my mom used to tell me stories about her, about the villa where she grew up, the olive groves. Elena's expression turned wistful. I always thought maybe I'd go there someday, see where she came from. Then we'll go, Marcus said it impulsively, after the baby's born. We'll spend a month in Tuscany, learn to make pasta or whatever people do there. You can't just leave for a month. Why not? I own half the city. I can do what I want. He caught himself, recognized the pattern. Sorry. We can talk about it, plan it together, if you want to go. I do want to go. Elena touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. But wanting things and actually making them happen are different. I've wanted a lot of things in this marriage that never materialized. The hurt in her voice was quiet but unmistakable. Marcus covered her hand with his. Name them. All the things you wanted. Let me try to give them to you now. It's not about gifts, Marcus. It's about presence. About you actually being here. Not just physically, but emotionally. She pulled back, wrapped her arms around herself. I wanted you to ask about my day. To remember things I told you. To notice when I was sad or stressed or lonely. I wanted to matter more than your next deal. You did matter. You do. Then why did I feel invisible? The question hung between them, unanswerable except through action. Words had failed them too many times. Marcus needed to prove this was different, that he was different. But how did he demonstrate transformation in a single morning? His phone buzzed again. Then again. Persistent. Elena's gaze flicked to his pocket, wariness creeping back into her expression. You should check it, she said. I know you want to. I promised. I know what you promised, but ignoring your business completely isn't sustainable either. We both know that. Elena slid off the stool, put distance between them. The question is whether you can check your messages without disappearing into them, without forgetting I'm in the room. It was a test, a fair one. Marcus pulled out his phone, powered it on, and immediately regretted it. 43 missed calls, 78 text messages. The voicemail icon showed 15 new recordings. His inbox was an avalanche of crisis and demands and fury. Anthony Chen. We need to talk immediately. Dmitry Volkov. This is unacceptable. Call me or I'm out. Samuel Torres. The port situation just blew up. Where the hell are you? And underneath the business messages, something else. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Saw your wife left last night. Heard you went running after her. Interesting weakness to develop. Ice flooded Marcus's veins. The message was a warning and a threat wrapped together. Someone was watching his house. Had seen Elena leave, seen him chase her, was now cataloging that information as leverage. This was why he'd built walls, why he'd created distance. Because the moment anyone saw that Elena mattered, she became a target. What is it? Elena asked. You went pale. Marcus forced himself to breathe normally. Nothing. Just a lot of messages from last night. Don't lie to me. We're past that. She crossed to him, took the phone from his hands, and scrolled through messages before he could stop her. Her expression hardened as she read. Who sent this? The one about weakness? I don't know. Unknown number. But you know what it means. Not a question. Elena handed back the phone, her jaw set. Someone's threatening me because I matter to you. I'll handle it. How? By pushing me away again? By making me invisible so they can't use me against you? Her voice rose. That's the pattern, isn't it? That's why you created distance. You thought keeping me at arm's length would keep me safe. It did keep you safe. No, Marcus. It kept you comfortable. It let you pretend you were protecting me instead of admitting you were protecting yourself from having to choose between your empire and your marriage. Elena's eyes blazed. Well, guess what? You can't have both. Not the way you've been operating. So decide, right now, what matters more? The ultimatum should have angered him. Instead, it crystallized everything. Marcus looked at his phone, at the empire demanding his attention, the associates expecting answers, the threats lurking in unknown numbers. Then, at Elena, standing there fierce and vulnerable and carrying his child. Not a choice, actually, not even close. Marcus opened his messages, typed rapidly, and hit send before he could second-guess the decision. 3 identical texts to Anthony, Dimitri, and Samuel. Taking family leave for the next 2 weeks. All decisions on hold. Michael Chen will handle emergencies. Do not contact me unless someone is dying. Then he forwarded the anonymous threatening message to his head of security with a single instruction. Find out who sent this. And make sure they understand that threatening my wife has consequences. Finally, he changed his voicemail greeting. You've reached Marcus Vale. I'm unavailable until January 9th. For urgent business matters, contact Michael Chen at the following number. For everything else, leave a message, and I'll respond when I return. He set the phone face down on the counter and looked at Elena. Done. She stared at him, clearly not having expected such immediate action. You just walked away from your entire empire. For 2 weeks. They'll survive. Marcus moved closer, giving her space to retreat if needed. You asked me to choose. I chose. And I'll keep choosing you every time you ask until you believe it. What about the threat? The person watching the house? My security team will handle it. That's what I pay them for. He caught her skeptical expression. I'm not being dismissive. Someone threatening you is serious and it will be dealt with. But I'm not letting anonymous cowards dictate how I live my life or treat my wife. That's what they want, for fear to control me. I'm done with that. Elena absorbed this, conflict playing across her face. This feels too easy, like you're making grand gestures again instead of actual change. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally understanding what you've been trying to tell me for months. Marcus risked touching her arm. I built an empire thinking it would give us security. But what's the point of security if I'm too paranoid to actually live? If I'm so busy protecting us from external threats that I become the biggest threat to our happiness? That's a nice speech. It's the truth. Elena, I can't promise there won't be dangers. My world is what it is. But I can promise I won't use those dangers as an excuse to abandon you emotionally. Not anymore. The kitchen fell quiet. Maria had discreetly vanished, giving them privacy. Outside, church bells rang somewhere in the distance. Christmas service starting, normal people doing normal things while Marcus and Elena fought for the survival of their marriage. I want to believe you, Elena said finally, but belief requires evidence, and I need more than one morning of good behavior. That's fair. What can I do right now, today, to start building that evidence? She considered. Take me to see a doctor, not the fanciest specialist money can buy, just a good OBGYN who can confirm everything's okay with the pregnancy. And you come with me. Not because you're managing the situation, but because you're an actual partner in this. Okay? I'll make calls. He stopped. Sorry, you make the calls, choose the doctor you want. I'll just be there. A small smile ghosted across Elena's face. That's a start. And tonight, I want you to cook dinner with me. Actually cook, not just watch. We're going to make something together and eat it at that kitchen table. And you're going to tell me more about your childhood and your sister and all the things you've never talked about. The vulnerability required in that request made Marcus's chest tight, but he'd promised transparency. Deal. Though fair warning, my cooking skills are limited to scrambled eggs and toast. Then we'll make something simple. Elena's expression softened slightly. This isn't about perfection, Marcus. It's about trying, about showing up. I can do that. He hoped it was true. They spent the rest of Christmas morning in careful reconstruction. Elena called 3 different medical practices before finding one with a doctor she liked the sound of. A woman named Dr. Sarah Patel, who specialized in high-risk pregnancies and had availability the day after Christmas. Marcus sat beside her during the call, listening, learning not to interject or manage. Afterward, they walked through the mansion together, and Marcus saw it through Elena's eyes, beautiful and cold. A showpiece rather than a home. Every room designed to impress, none designed for comfort. No wonder she'd felt like a ghost here. What would you change? He asked. If this place was actually yours, what would make it feel like home? Elena looked around the cavernous living room with its leather furniture and abstract art. I'd get rid of half this stuff, add things that actually mean something, photos maybe. books we've read, things that tell a story instead of just looking expensive. Then let's do it. After the 2 weeks, assuming you stay, he caught her warning glance. When you decide to stay, we'll redecorate however you want. Make this place ours instead of mine. They ended up in Marcus's office, the nerve center of his empire. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with filing cabinets containing documentation of every deal he'd ever made. Elena had been in here exactly twice in 6 years, both times looking for him when emergencies arose. "I hate this room," she said bluntly. "It feels like a fortress, like you built walls inside walls to keep everyone out." She wasn't wrong. Marcus had designed this space specifically to intimidate, to project power, to remind visitors who controlled what. But it had also served as his hiding place, the room he retreated to when marriage felt complicated and business felt simple. What if we got rid of it? The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. Turn it into something else. A nursery maybe, or just a normal room where normal things happen. Elena's eyes widened. "You'd give up your office." "I can work from anywhere. Hell, I can work from the kitchen table if needed. This room," he gestured at the fortress he'd built. "This represents everything I'm trying to move away from. Maybe it's time to let it go." "One step at a time," Elena cautioned. "Don't tear apart your entire life in one day trying to prove something. I need consistency, not grand gestures that you'll resent later." Wise. She was absolutely right. Marcus nodded. "Then for now, maybe I just close the door on it. Literally. Spend the next 2 weeks not coming in here unless absolutely necessary." "I can work with that." They ate lunch together. Sandwiches Maria had prepared before slipping away to her own family celebration. Simple food, simple conversation. Marcus asked about Elena's college friend Simone. Learned they'd been roommates for 3 years and stayed close until Elena's marriage created distance. Learned that Elena missed teaching, missed working with kids, had given up her career not because Marcus asked, but because being Mrs. Marcus Vale became a full-time job of its own. "I could go back," she said, picking at her sandwich. "Once the baby's older, there are schools that would hire me." "Do you want to?" "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe something different entirely." She looked at him. "The point is, I want the option. I want to be more than just your wife, more than just someone's mother. I want to be me, too." "Then you should be. Whatever that looks like." Marcus meant it. "I married you because of who you were, not who I thought I could shape you into." "Did you, though? Marry me because of who I was?" The question was soft, but serious. "Or did you marry me because I fit into the life you were building?" Marcus wanted to protest, to insist he'd loved her for herself. But honesty required acknowledging uncomfortable truths. "Maybe both. You were brilliant and beautiful and everything I thought I wanted. But I also liked how you made me look, how you handled social situations, how you fit into my world. At least you're honest. I'm trying to be, even when it makes me look bad." He set down his sandwich. "Elena, I can't change why I married you 7 years ago. But I can change why I'm fighting to stay married now. And it's not because you're convenient or appropriate. It's because losing you would destroy me in ways that losing my empire never could." She studied him across the table, searching for cracks in the facade. "You're good at saying the right things." "I know, words have always been easy." Marcus leaned forward. "So stop listening to what I say. Watch what I do. Hold me accountable to actions, not promises." "I will." Elena stood, started clearing plates. "Starting now. You said you'd help cook dinner. Let's see if you actually follow through." They spent the afternoon in domesticity Marcus had never experienced. Elena taught him how to make chicken piccata, simple enough for his limited skills, complex enough to require attention. They moved around this kitchen together, her instructing, him following, both of them learning a rhythm they'd never developed. His phone stayed on the counter, face down, buzzing occasionally with messages he didn't check. Each vibration was a test he passed simply by ignoring it. Elena noticed. "You're doing better than I expected." "I'm trying not to think about what I'm missing." "What are you missing?" "Anthony's probably having an aneurysm. Dimitri's definitely on a plane back to New York, furious. Samuel's scrambling to handle the port situation without my input." Marcus sliced lemons with careful attention. And whoever sent that threatening text is waiting to see if I respond. Do you regret it? Walking away? Did he? Marcus considered while the chicken sizzled in the pan. 24 hours ago, the question would have been absurd. His empire was everything, the culmination of 15 years of careful planning, brutal decisions, strategic risks. Walking away for 2 weeks would have seemed impossible. But standing here in his kitchen, teaching his pregnant wife how not to burn butter, Marcus found the regret he expected simply didn't exist. No, he said. I don't regret it. Why not? Because this matters more, he gestured between them. This moment, this conversation, teaching you that I can actually show up when it counts. That's worth more than any deal Anthony's negotiating or any threat Dimitri's making. Elena turned off the burner, moved the pan aside, and kissed him. Not the performative kisses they'd exchanged at public events, but something real, hungry and desperate and full of the hope that maybe, possibly, they could salvage this wreckage of a marriage. Marcus pulled her closer, careful of her still flat stomach, and kissed her back with 6 years of apology and longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena's eyes were bright with tears. Don't make me hope, she whispered. If you're going to break my heart again, do it now, before I let myself believe. I'm not going to break your heart. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. But I can promise I'll try my damnedest not to. That I'll fight for this every single day. That I'll choose you over empire, over power, over everything that used to matter more than it should have. Pretty words again. Then forget the words. Just watch. He kissed her forehead. Watch what I do. And if I start slipping, if I start choosing wrong, call me on it. Don't let me get away with being a terrible husband just because I'm good at apologizing. Elena nodded against his chest. They stood there in the kitchen while dinner cooled on the stove, holding on to each other like lifelines, both terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Outside, Christmas Day faded into evening. The city sparkled with lights and celebrations. Inside the mansion where Marcus had built his empire and nearly lost his family, something fragile and vital began to take root. Not a guarantee, not a solution, but a possibility. Maybe they could do this. Maybe 2 weeks would be enough to prove change was real. Maybe love could survive 6 years of neglect and bloom again into something stronger. Or maybe Marcus was fooling himself. Maybe the empire would demand its due. Maybe the threats lurking in anonymous messages would escalate. Maybe Elena would realize that hoping was easier than actually trusting, and that past patterns predicted future behavior more accurately than present promises. But for tonight, they had chicken piccata and quiet conversation, and the simple miracle of being together in the same room without walls between them. It was a start. And sometimes Marcus was learning starts were all you got. The rest required showing up every single day after and proving the start wasn't just performance. He was ready to try. He had to be. Because the alternative, losing Elena and their child, going back to empty rooms and hollow victories, was no longer something he could survive. The empire could burn. His marriage would not. Not again. Not if he had anything to say about it. The first week passed in a careful dance of reconstruction. Marcus kept his phone silenced during meals, asked Elena about her day every evening, and slowly learned the rhythms of a marriage he'd abandoned years ago. But on the 8th day, reality shattered their fragile peace. Elena woke at 3 a.m. to an empty bed and the sound of Marcus's voice drifting up from downstairs. Not the casual conversation they'd been building, but the clipped, dangerous tone he used when someone had crossed a line. She found him in the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand braced against the counter like he needed the support. The tension radiating from his shoulders made her stomach clench. I don't care what he thinks he knows, Marcus said quietly. You make it clear that if he comes within 100 yards of this house, he won't live long enough to regret it. Elena's breath caught. Marcus's gaze snapped to her, and something like guilt flickered across his face before he could hide it. Handle it, he said into the phone, then ended the call. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything he'd promised to share and was clearly about to withhold. Who was that? Elena asked. My head of security. At 3 a.m. It's his job to call when situations develop. Marcus set the phone down carefully. Go back to bed. It's nothing you need to worry about. The dismissal was automatic, reflexive, exactly the pattern they'd been trying to break. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. That's not how this works anymore, she said. You don't get to decide what I need to worry about. We agreed. Transparency. Marcus's jaw tightened. Some things are better left. No. She cut him off, moving closer. We're not doing this. You don't protect me by keeping me in the dark. That's how we got here in the first place. He studied her face, conflict playing across his features. The old Marcus would have shut down, walked away, created distance. Elena watched him fight that instinct, saw the moment he chose differently. Vincent Lazzaro's brother is making threats, he said finally. Carlo Lazzaro. He blames me for Vincent's death and he's been tracking our movements for the past week. The anonymous text on Christmas was his. So were 3 others I didn't tell you about. Elena's blood went cold. You didn't think I should know someone's been threatening us? I was handling it. By lying to me? By keeping secrets after you promised no more walls? Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. What else haven't you told me? Marcus ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Carlo made contact with a federal agent, someone who's been trying to build a case against me for 2 years. He's offering testimony in exchange for immunity and witness protection. Testimony about what? Everything. The empire, the deals, the people I've worked with, things that could send me to prison for the rest of my life. He met her eyes. Things that could make you an accessory if you knew about them. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. Elena backed against the counter, one hand instinctively covering her stomach. So you've been keeping me ignorant to protect yourself legally. To protect you. Marcus moved toward her, stopped when she flinched. Elena, if you don't know details, you can't be charged. That's why I've always lied to me? Always kept me in the dark? She laughed bitterly. I thought we were past this. I thought you understood that I can't be your partner if you're hiding half your life from me. You want details? Fine. I run illegal gambling operations in 3 states. I control the Port Authority through bribes and strategic intimidation. I've laundered money through construction projects and legitimate businesses. I've ordered people hurt, not killed, never killed after Vincent, but hurt when they threatened my interests. His voice was flat, reciting facts. I've broken probably 50 federal laws and twice that many state laws. And now Carlo Lazzaro wants to put me away for all of it, because I killed his brother before his brother could kill us. Elena absorbed this, the clinical description of a criminal empire built on violence and corruption. She'd known, abstractly, what Marcus did, but hearing it laid out so bluntly was different. Did Vincent really try to kill us? She asked quietly. Or is that the story you tell yourself to sleep at night? Marcus's expression went carefully blank. You think I'm lying. I think you're good at justifying your choices. I think you've been lying to yourself as much as to me. She held his gaze. So tell me the truth. Did Vincent Lazzaro actually threaten me specifically? Or was he just a business rival who got in your way? The silence that followed was damning. Marcus turned away, braced both hands on the counter, his head bowed. He threatened my territory, he said finally. He was making moves on the waterfront contracts, undercutting my deals, turning my associates against me. If I'd let him continue, he would have destroyed everything I'd built. That's not the same as threatening to kill me. No, it's not. Marcus's voice was barely audible. But he would have. Eventually. Once he'd weakened my position enough, you would have become the obvious target. So I acted first. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. You killed a man for threatening your business interests, and you told me it was to protect me. It was to protect you, just not in the immediate sense. He turned back, and the rawness in his face was almost painful to see. Elena, in my world, you don't wait for threats to materialize. You identify potential dangers and eliminate them before they become actual dangers. Vincent was smart, ambitious, and ruthless. If I'd given him time, he absolutely would have come after you. So, yes, I killed him for business reasons, but also because letting him live put you at risk. Do you hear yourself? She shook her head. You're still justifying murder, still pretending this was about protecting me when really it was about protecting your empire. They're the same thing, don't you understand? My empire is what keeps us safe. The power, the fear, the reputation. That's what prevents people like Carlo Lazzaro from just walking in here and taking everything. Marcus's control was fraying. You want me to walk away from all of it? Fine. But understand what that means. It means we're vulnerable. It means people who've been held in check by fear suddenly have an opening. It means our child grows up with a target on their back because I used to be someone important and now I'm just an easy mark. Or it means we leave, Elena said. We take the money you've made and we disappear. Start over somewhere your enemies can't find us. There's nowhere they can't find us. You think witness protection works? Ask the 17 people who've disappeared from it over the past decade how safe they felt. He moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. I know you want simple answers. Walk away from the empire, be a normal family, live happily ever after. But that's not reality. Reality is that I've made enemies who will spend years hunting me if I show weakness. And running is the biggest weakness I could show. Elena felt tears building but refused to let them fall. Then what are we doing here, Marcus? What's the point of these 2 weeks if nothing can actually change? Everything can change, just not overnight. He reached for her hands, and this time she let him take them. I'm working on legitimate transitions, clean businesses that can replace the dirty ones, deals that don't require violence or corruption. But it takes time to build that without leaving us exposed. How much time? I don't know. A year, maybe 2. Depends on how cooperative my associates are with the transition. He squeezed her hands. But I'm doing it, Elena. For you and for our baby. I'm building an exit strategy that doesn't get us all killed. She wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to believe that change was possible, that the man she'd loved 7 years ago could somehow emerge from the criminal he'd become. But trust, once shattered, didn't reassemble easily. What about Carlo Lazzaro? She asked. What happens with him? Marcus hesitated. My security team is handling it. That's not an answer. Are you going to kill him too? No. The word came quickly, firmly. That would just escalate things, make his family's vendetta worse. Besides, he stopped, seemed to reconsider what he was about to say. Besides what? Besides, I promised you I'd stop choosing violence first, that I'd find other solutions. Marcus's voice softened. So we're approaching this differently. Federal agents watching him means I can't touch him directly, but I can make him irrelevant. Can offer the FBI bigger fish in exchange for leaving me alone. I've already got Michael working on deals that would satisfy their investigation without actually implicating me in anything they can prosecute. You're going to turn on your own people? I'm going to give them information on operations I'm already shutting down, organizations that are transitioning away from me anyway. Yes, some people might face charges, but they're people who've been breaking our agreements, cutting side deals, becoming liabilities. He met her eyes. I'm not a saint, Elena. I'm never going to be. But I'm trying to be better than I was. The moral complexity made her head spin. Marcus was still manipulating, still calculating, still operating in shades of gray that most people never touched. But he was doing it, he claimed, to build them a way out. I need to think, she said, about all of this, about whether I can actually live with who you are versus who you're trying to become. That's fair. Marcus released her hands. Take the time you need. Ask me anything. I won't lie anymore. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if you can't make this transition work, if the empire demands too much, if the dangers get too real, if you have to choose between your power and our safety, you'll choose us. You'll walk away even if it means losing everything else. The request hung between them. Marcus stood very still, and Elena could see him running calculations, considering scenarios, weighing the odds of having to make that choice. I promise, he said finally. If it comes down to it, I'll walk away. The empire can burn if that's what it takes to keep you and our baby safe. Elena nodded slowly. Okay, then I'll stay. For the rest of the 2 weeks at least. But Marcus, I know, words versus actions. I'll prove it. They went back to bed, but neither slept. Elena lay in the darkness, feeling their child flutter inside her, barely perceptible movements that reminded her what was at stake. This wasn't just about whether she could forgive Marcus. It was about whether their baby deserved to grow up in this world of threats and violence and moral compromises. Beside her, Marcus stared at the ceiling, his mind clearly racing through contingencies and strategies. Even now, even trying to change, He couldn't stop being what he'd become. The question was whether that made him irredeemable or just human. The next morning brought unwanted answers. Elena came downstairs to find Marcus in the forbidden office, door open, laptop glowing, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw her in the doorway, he had the grace to look guilty. "I have to call you back," he said into the phone, then set it down. "Before you get angry, you promised no office during the 2 weeks, no business before 6 p.m. Elena's voice was deadly calm. "It's 7:30 in the morning. Carlo Lazzaro was picked up by federal agents last night. They're offering him a deal I need to counter before he accepts." Marcus stood, moved around the desk. "This is crisis management, not me breaking my promise." "It's day 8, Marcus. Day 8, and you're already back in here making deals and strategizing." She shook her head. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. The Empire calls and you answer every time." "That's not fair. I've been present for 8 days. I've kept every commitment." His frustration leaked through. "But I can't just ignore situations that could destroy everything. Surely you understand that." "I understand that you still prioritize your empire over your promises to me." "I'm trying to protect us." "No, you're trying to protect your power. There's a difference." Elena stepped into the office, this room she'd learned to hate. "You know what I think? I think you can't actually do this, can't actually walk away. Because the empire isn't just what you built, it's who you are. And you'd rather lose me than lose that part of yourself." The accusation struck deep. Marcus's expression cycled through denial, anger, and something that looked like devastation. "That's not true." "Prove it." Elena crossed her arms. "Right now, walk away from this crisis. Let Carlo Lazzaro make his deal. Let the FBI investigate. Let your empire handle it without you." "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking you to choose me. Actually choose me. Not after you handle this one crisis. Not once you've secured this one deal. Now. Today. This moment." Marcus looked at his laptop, at his phone, at the files spread across the desk documenting his carefully built empire. Elena could see the war in his eyes. The part that wanted to be the man she needed battling the part that couldn't let go of control. The silence stretched. Outside, morning traffic hummed. Inside this office, inside this moment, their entire future balanced on what Marcus did next. He picked up the phone. Elena's heart sank. But instead of making a call, Marcus powered it down completely. Then he closed the laptop, gathered the files, and locked them in a desk drawer. "Okay," he said quietly. "You're right. Carlo Lazzaro is Michael's problem now. The FBI is Michael's problem. All of it. Michael's problem." He walked to where Elena stood. "I'm choosing you. Today. This moment. And every moment after. Even if it costs me everything else." She searched his face for signs of resentment, for the calculation that meant he was just performing again. But all she saw was exhaustion and sincerity and fear that she might not believe him. "You mean that?" she said. "Not quite a question." "I mean it. I'm terrified of what it might cost. But I mean it." Marcus took her hands. "Elena, I've been building this empire for 15 years, and in 8 days with you, I've remembered what it was all supposed to be for. It was supposed to give us security, freedom, a good life, but somewhere along the way it became the point instead of the means. I forgot that power without someone to share it with is just loneliness in an expensive suit." "That's very poetic." "It's the truth." He pulled her closer. "So yes, I'm walking away from this crisis, and the next one, and every one after that until our 2 weeks are done. And then, if you'll let me, I'm walking away from the whole thing, slowly, carefully, in ways that don't leave us vulnerable. But I'm walking away." Elena let herself lean against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his arms. She wanted so badly to trust this, to believe that transformation was possible. "What about the baby?" she asked. "What kind of father do you want to be?" "The opposite of mine. Present, patient, actually giving a damn about their life beyond just providing financially." Marcus's hand moved to her stomach. "I want to be there for first steps and first words and terrible school plays. I want to know their friends, their fears, their dreams. I want them to never doubt that they matter more than any deal or any empire or any amount of money." "Those are beautiful goals, but goals aren't the same as reality." Then hold me accountable. Call me out when I slip. Don't let me fall back into old patterns. He tilted her chin up. I need you to be my conscience, Elena, because mine got pretty warped somewhere along the way. She managed a small smile. That's a lot of responsibility. You can handle it. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Elena's voice cracked. I'm bringing a baby into a world where federal agents are investigating their father and criminals want revenge. How is that responsible parenting? It's not, which is why I'm getting us out. Marcus guided her to the desk chair, sat her down, then knelt in front of her. Listen to me. By the time our baby is born, I will have transitioned every illegal operation into legitimate businesses or shut them down entirely. The FBI will have no case because there will be nothing to build a case on. And Carlo Lazzaro will be irrelevant because the empire he wants revenge against won't exist anymore. That's impossible. It's improbable, but not impossible. I'm good at what I do, Elena. I built an empire from nothing. I can dismantle it just as efficiently if I'm motivated. His hands covered hers. And I've never been more motivated than I am right now. Elena wanted to believe him, but the gap between promise and reality felt vast. We have 6 days left in our 2 weeks, she said. Show me how this dismantling works. Show me actual progress toward the life you're promising. Okay. Starting today, I meet with every major associate and begin transition talks. I offer them buyouts, territory trades, clean exits. Some will fight me, and I'll handle that. But by the end of this week, the foundation will be laid. Marcus stood, pulling her up with him. And you're going to be part of those meetings. See exactly what I'm dealing with. No more protecting you from reality. The offer surprised her. You want me in your business meetings? I want you to understand what I'm walking away from and why it's worth walking away from. Complete transparency, remember? He led her out of the office, closing the door behind them. Besides, having you there will keep me honest. I'm less likely to slip into old negotiating tactics if you're watching. It was manipulative and sincere in equal measure, vintage Marcus. But Elena appreciated the self-awareness. They spent the morning over coffee while Marcus explained the structure of his empire in detail Elena had never been given before. She learned about the gambling operations disguised as private clubs, the Port Authority control that funneled goods without proper inspection, the construction contracts that laundered money through inflated budgets. She learned names of associates, territories they controlled, weaknesses in the organization that could be exploited during transition. By noon, Elena's head spun with information that made her technically complicit in federal crimes. You realize you've just made me an accessory, she said. No, I've made you informed. There's a difference legally. You're not participating, just aware. Marcus refilled her decaf coffee. But if it makes you uncomfortable, everything about this makes me uncomfortable. That's kind of the point. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. I need to see the whole picture to understand what changing it actually requires. Are you sure? Once you know all of this, you can't unknow it. I'm sure. No more walls, Marcus. Show me everything. So he did. For 3 days, Elena sat in on meetings with associates who looked at her presence with confusion and suspicion. She watched Marcus negotiate buyouts with men who'd built their own empires on the foundation of his. She saw the delicate balance between strength and diplomacy required to dismantle power structures without igniting wars. Anthony Chen was the hardest sell. He came to the mansion on day 11, furious and betrayed. You're really doing this, Anthony said, standing in the living room like a stranger, instead of the man who'd been Marcus's right hand for 8 years. Burning it all down because your wife gave you an ultimatum. I'm doing this because I finally understand what matters. Marcus stood between Anthony and Elena, protective without being obvious. And yes, Elena helped me understand it, but this is my decision. Bullshit. This is you being weak, letting emotion override strategy. Anthony's gaze flicked to Elena with barely concealed contempt. She's been here how long? 6 years? And suddenly she threatens to leave and you dismantle everything we built? Watch your tone, Marcus said quietly. The menace underneath was unmistakable. Or what? You'll have me killed? Oh wait, you don't do that anymore. You've gone soft. Anthony laughed bitterly. The Marcus Vale I knew would never have let anyone dictate terms, would never have chosen a woman over his empire. The Marcus Vale you knew was missing the whole point. Marcus's voice stayed level, despite clear anger. I built this empire thinking it would give me security and power. And you know what it gave me? An empty house. And a wife who was planning to raise my child alone because I'd made her life so unbearable. That's not success, Anthony. That's failure dressed up in expensive suits. So what do I get out of this transition? What's my consolation prize for watching you throw away everything? Marcus laid out the offer he'd prepared. Full control of the waterfront operations, a generous cash buyout for territories he was relinquishing, and connections to maintain legitimacy during his own eventual transition. It was more than fair. Anthony had to know it was more than fair. And if I don't accept, Anthony asked, then you're welcome to try operating independently, but you won't have my backing, my protection, or my network. You'll be vulnerable to everyone who sees an opening. Marcus met his eyes steadily. I'm not your enemy, Anthony. I'm giving you an opportunity to build something of your own without the baggage of our past operations. Take it or leave it. The tension in the room was suffocating. Elena watched Anthony consider his options, saw him glance at her like this was somehow her fault, saw him recognize that Marcus had made his choice and nothing would change it. Fine, Anthony said finally. I'll take the deal. But understand something, we're done. After this, you and I are nothing to each other. No friendship, no loyalty, no history. I understand, Marcus said quietly. And I'm sorry it ends this way. Are you? Because you look pretty happy with your decision. Anthony headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. I hope she's worth it, Marcus. I hope when the FBI comes knocking and the vultures start circling and you realize you gave up all your power for nothing, I hope she's worth it. He left without waiting for a response. The door closed with finality that echoed through the mansion. Elena moved to Marcus's side. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's right to be angry. I am dismantling everything we built together. Marcus pulled her close. But he's wrong about one thing. You're worth all of it and more. What if this doesn't work? What if walking away from your empire doesn't keep us safe? Then we'll face whatever comes together, as partners. As actual partners this time, not you sitting in the dark while I handle everything. He kissed the top of her head. I can't promise perfection, Elena. But I can promise presence. And I can promise that our baby will never doubt that they matter more than power or money or reputation. But day 14 arrived like a verdict. Their 2 weeks were done. Elena woke to find Marcus already awake, watching her with an expression that mixed hope and terror. Today's the day, he said. You decide if you stay or if I sign the divorce papers. Elena sat up, one hand on her stomach where their baby grew. In 2 weeks, Marcus had kept his promises. He'd been present, transparent, willing to walk away from his empire. He'd sat with her through an emotional first ultrasound where they'd seen their baby's heartbeat for the first time. He'd cooked dinners and asked about her day and slowly, carefully rebuilt the foundation of their marriage. But 2 weeks didn't erase 6 years. And promises made in crisis didn't guarantee long-term change. I'm terrified, she admitted, of believing in this, of letting myself hope that it's real. That's fair. I've given you plenty of reasons not to trust me. Marcus took her hand. So here's what I suggest. Don't decide forever today. Just decide for now. Stay another month. See if the changes hold when crisis fades into routine. If I slip back into old patterns, you can leave and I won't fight it. 1 more month. 1 more month. With the same conditions. Presence, transparency, prioritizing us over empire. He squeezed her hand. And at the end of it, we reassess. Keep doing that until you either believe it's real or decide I'm never going to change enough. It was reasonable. More than she'd expected from a man used to controlling every outcome. Okay, Elena said. 1 more month. But Marcus, I know. Actions, not words. I'll prove it. He pulled her into his arms. Every single day. I'll prove you made the right choice by giving me this chance. She hoped he was right. She hoped they both were. Because the alternative, raising their child alone, watching this marriage collapse despite all their efforts, was too painful to contemplate. Outside their bedroom, the empire was crumbling exactly as Marcus had orchestrated. Associates were accepting buyouts. Legitimate businesses were being structured to replace illegal ones. Federal agents were finding their investigations stymied by lack of current criminal activity to prosecute. And somewhere in the city, Carlo Lazzaro plotted revenge that Marcus had decided was someone else's problem to handle. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and completely different from the one either of them had imagined when they'd married 7 years ago. But for the first time in years, they were facing it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The extra month Marcus had asked for stretched into 6 weeks before the fragile peace shattered completely. Elena was 4 months pregnant, finally showing enough that strangers noticed, when Michael Chen called at 2 in the morning with news that made Marcus go pale in the darkness of their bedroom. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Marcus said into the phone, already moving toward the closet. Elena sat up, dread pooling in her stomach. What happened? Carlo Lazzaro escaped federal custody. He killed 2 agents during transport. Marcus pulled on jeans, a sweater, moved with the efficient urgency she'd learned meant real danger. Michael thinks he's coming here, tonight. The words didn't fully process at first. Then they did, and Elena felt ice flood her veins. Coming here? To the house? My security team is already positioning. The house is a fortress when it needs to be. We'll be safe. But Marcus's expression contradicted his words. He was terrified in a way she'd never seen before. I need you to get dressed and come with me. There's a safe room in the basement. Reinforced steel, separate ventilation, enough supplies for 3 days if necessary. Marcus, please, Elena, don't argue. Just trust me. He was already guiding her up, handing her clothes. Carlo's not making idle threats anymore. He's committed, and if he gets past my security, I need to know you and our baby are somewhere he can't reach. Elena dressed with shaking hands, her mind racing through implications. This was the violence Marcus had been trying to protect her from. The reality underneath all his careful transitions and legitimate business restructuring. His past had finally caught up, and now it was hunting them both. Downstairs, the mansion had transformed. Men Elena recognized from security details moved through rooms with weapons she hadn't known they carried. Cameras she'd never noticed were being monitored from the living room, which had become an impromptu command center. This wasn't a home anymore. It was a fortress preparing for siege. Michael stood in the foyer, his expression grim. He nodded to Elena with something that looked like apology. Mrs. Vale, I'm sorry it's come to this. How did he escape? Marcus asked, all business now. The husband who'd been cooking dinner with her 3 hours ago had vanished, replaced by the empire builder who'd survived 15 years through calculated ruthlessness. Inside help, someone on the federal transport team. We're still working out who, but it was coordinated, professional. Michael pulled up security footage on a tablet. He went dark immediately after the escape. No phone activity, no credit cards, no digital footprint, but his car was spotted 2 miles from here 20 minutes ago. He's scouting, Marcus said, seeing what security looks like before he makes his move. That's our assessment, which gives us maybe an hour to prepare. An hour. Elena tried to process that in 60 minutes. Someone who blamed Marcus for his brother's death would try to break into their home with murder on his mind. She touched her stomach reflexively, felt their baby move under her palm. Marcus saw the gesture, and something shifted in his face. Michael, I need you to take Elena to the safe room. Stay with her. If Carlo gets past everyone else, you're the last line of defense. Marcus, no. Michael's voice was sharp. You need me coordinating security. Let Rodriguez handle. Rodriguez doesn't know about the safe room. You do. And you're the only person besides me I trust completely with my wife's life. Marcus met his eyes. Please, Michael, this is the most important thing I'll ever ask you to do. The weight of the request hung between them. Michael had been with Marcus almost as long as Anthony, had helped build the empire, had stood beside him through every major decision, and now Marcus was asking him to step away from the fight, to protect instead of engage. Okay, Michael said finally, but if this goes bad, it won't. Marcus said it with certainty he clearly didn't feel. Get her downstairs. I'll handle Carlo. Elena grabbed his arm before he could turn away. You can't face him alone. That's suicide. I have 12 security personnel and a house designed to repel exactly this kind of attack. I'm not alone. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. But I need to know you're safe. Please, Elena, let me do this. Let me protect you the way I should have been protecting you all along. She wanted to argue, to insist they call the police, the FBI, anyone who might actually be equipped to handle an escaped killer. But looking into Marcus's eyes, She understood this was bigger than tactics. This was him finally choosing their family over everything else, putting her safety ahead of pride or control or the empire he'd built. "Come back to me," she whispered. "To us. Promise you'll come back. I promise." He kissed her, desperate and fierce. "I love you. I should have said it every day for 6 years, but I'm saying it now. I love you more than anything I've ever built or owned or controlled." "I love you too." The words felt like both blessing and curse, which is why I need you to be smart about this. Don't try to be a hero. Just trying to be a husband and a father. Marcus pressed his hand to her stomach, felt their baby kick against his palm. "Our daughter deserves better than a dad who got himself killed being reckless." "Daughter?" Elena managed a watery smile. The ultrasound was inconclusive. "I know, but I have a feeling." He kissed her once more, then stepped back. "Michael, get her downstairs. Now." The basement safe room was exactly what Marcus had described. Reinforced steel door with biometric locks, concrete walls thick enough to stop bullets, air filtration system, stockpiled food and water, even a small bathroom. It was survival bunker disguised as wine cellar storage. Michael sealed them in, and the heavy door closing felt like being buried alive. Elena sank onto one of the cots Marcus had installed, trying to control her breathing, trying not to panic. "He'll be okay," Michael said, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as her. Marcus has survived worse situations than this. Has he? Or has he just been lucky? Elena looked at him. "Tell me the truth, Michael. What are the odds Carlo gets through security?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, if Carlo's as good as his brother was, and if he's willing to die trying, maybe 50-50. Our security is excellent, but a motivated individual who doesn't care about survival can do a lot of damage before being stopped." 50-50. Their baby had a 50% chance of losing their father before they were even born. Elena felt bile rise in her throat. "This is my fault," she said. "If I hadn't pushed Marcus to walk away from the Empire, if I'd just accepted the distance, this is Carlo Lazzaro's fault, and Vincent's before him, and the whole violent system that Marcus has been trying to extract himself from." Michael sat across from her. "You didn't create this situation, Mrs. Vale. You're just caught in the aftermath of decisions made long before you entered the picture." "That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you stop blaming yourself." Michael's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression tightening. "Carlo's on the grounds. He breached the perimeter at the east wall." Elena's heart hammered. Somewhere above them, her husband was preparing to face a killer, and she was trapped in a basement, useless and terrified. The minutes crawled. Michael monitored his phone, receiving updates he didn't share. Elena paced the small room, one hand on her stomach, talking to their baby and whispered reassurances she didn't believe. Then gunfire erupted, muffled by concrete and steel but unmistakable. Short, controlled bursts, then longer exchanges, shouting, more shots, the sounds of violence playing out like a nightmare soundtrack. Elena grabbed Michael's arm. "What's happening?" "Carlo brought reinforcements. 4 men, maybe 5. They're engaging security on the first floor." Michael was already moving to the door. "I need to get up there. Marcus said to stay with me." That was before this turned into a war. Michael typed rapidly on his phone. "I'm calling in backup. State police, FBI, everyone. But until they arrive..." A massive explosion shook the foundation. Dust rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered but held. "What the hell was that?" Elena's voice came out higher than she intended. Michael's face went white as he read his phone. "Breach charge. They blew the office door. Carlo's inside the main house." Everything Marcus had been trying to protect her from was happening right above their heads. Elena felt paralyzed by terror and helplessness in equal measure. Her husband was up there, outgunned, facing men who wanted him dead. "I have to help him," Michael said, already unsealing the door. "Wait." But he was gone, the heavy door swinging shut behind him with mechanical finality. The locks engaged automatically. Elena was alone. She sank to the floor, back against the wall, both hands on her stomach. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "Daddy's going to be okay. He promised he'd come back to us." But promises meant nothing against bullets and explosives and men motivated by revenge. Elena had no concept of time in the sealed room, could have been minutes or hours. The sounds from above continued. More gunfire, shouting, crashes that suggested furniture being destroyed. At one point, something heavy hit the floor directly overhead, shaking dust loose again. Then silence. Complete, devastating silence. Elena stared at the ceiling, hardly breathing, waiting for any sign of what that silence meant. Victory or massacre? Her husband alive or dead? Their future intact or shattered beyond repair? The intercom crackled to life, making her jump. Static, then breathing, then... Elena. Marcus's voice, rough with exhaustion but undeniably alive. Relief hit her so hard she nearly vomited. "I'm here," she managed. "Are you okay? What happened?" "It's over. Carlo's dead. His men are either dead or in custody. The house is..." He stopped, and she heard something that might have been a bitter laugh. "The house is destroyed, but we're safe. You're safe." "Let me out." Elena was already at the door, pounding on steel. "Marcus, let me out. I need to see you." "You don't want to see this. There's blood everywhere. Bodies. It's..." "I don't care. Open the door." A pause, then the locks disengaged. The door swung open to reveal Marcus standing in the basement, and Elena's breath caught. He was covered in blood, his shirt soaked with it, his face splattered, his hands shaking as he gripped the doorframe for support. "It's not mine," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "Most of it's not mine. I'm okay. Just..." He swayed slightly. "Maybe a little bit is mine." Elena saw the wound then, a gash across his ribs where a bullet had grazed him. Not fatal, but bleeding steadily. She moved to him, supporting his weight as he sagged against her. "You're not okay. We need to get you to a hospital. Ambulances are already here. Police too. FBI. Everyone." Marcus let her guide him to sit on the stairs. "It's going to be a circus. Questions, investigations, media coverage. Everything I tried to avoid. But we're alive." Elena pressed her hands to the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "That's what matters. We're alive and our baby's safe." "I killed him, Elena. Carlo. I shot him point blank when he came through the office door." Marcus's voice was flat, shock setting in. "I didn't hesitate. Didn't try to wound him or de-escalate, just killed him because he threatened you." "Good." The word came out fierce. "He was trying to kill you. Kill us. You did what you had to do. Self-defense is justifiable." "But the FBI is going to use this. They'll dig into everything, use Carlo's death as leverage to investigate every aspect of my empire." He looked at her, his eyes haunted. "I don't know if I can protect you from what's coming." Sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Elena heard voices upstairs, official and commanding. The cavalry had arrived, too late to prevent the carnage, but in time to document every detail. "Then don't protect me," she said. "Partner with me. We face it together, whatever comes." "But Marcus..." She made him look at her. "No more lies, no more walls. If the FBI wants to investigate, we cooperate. We give them everything on your legitimate businesses and nothing on what you've already shut down. We get the best lawyers money can buy and we fight this the right way. They could charge me. Prison time is a real possibility. Then we'll deal with that if it happens. But you can't run from this anymore. The empire, the violence, the whole life you built, it ends tonight, completely. No more transitions or strategic exits. You walk away from all of it and you don't look back." It was the ultimatum she'd been too afraid to give before. But sitting in the ruins of their home, Marcus bleeding from a gunfight, their baby moving inside her, Elena suddenly had perfect clarity. This had to end. Tonight. Forever. Marcus stared at her, and she watched him process what she was asking. Give up 15 years of work. Abandon the power structure he'd built. Become just a man instead of an empire builder. Vulnerable, exposed, ordinary. "Okay," he said finally. "You're right. This ends tonight. All of it." Federal agents appeared at the top of the stairs, weapons drawn, barking orders. Marcus raised his hand slowly, wincing at the movement. Elena stood with him, one hand on her stomach, the other on his arm. "I'm Marcus Vale," he said clearly. "This is my home. I'm the one who called this in, and I'm invoking my right to an attorney before I answer any questions." The next hours blurred together. Paramedics treated Marcus's wound. Superficial, they said, though it required stitches. Police photographers documented the carnage. FBI agents separated Marcus and Elena for questioning. Lawyers arrived, expensive and efficient, limiting what either of them could be asked. Elena sat in the back of an ambulance, getting checked for pregnancy complications from the stress, and watched her home become a crime scene. The mansion that had felt like a prison now looked like a war zone. Windows blown out, bullet holes in walls, blood-staining expensive carpets. The physical manifestation of a life built on violence finally catching up. "Mrs. Vale?" A female FBI agent approached, her expression professional but not unkind. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen. I'd like to ask you a few questions about tonight's events." "My lawyer advised me to limit my statements to what directly pertains to the attack," Elena said carefully. "Of course, I'm not here to trap you. I'm trying to understand what happened." Agent Chen sat beside her in the ambulance. "Did you see Carlo Lazzaro at any point tonight?" "No. I was in the basement safe room the entire time." "Did your husband tell you why Carlo might want to harm him?" Elena chose her words carefully. "He told me that Carlo blamed him for his brother Vincent's death, that there was a vendetta. Marcus took the threat seriously, which is why we had enhanced security. And Vincent Lazzaro's death. What did your husband tell you about that?" "That it was self-defense, that Vincent had threatened us both." Elena met the agent's eyes. "I don't know details beyond that. Marcus and I have been working on our marriage. He's been transitioning away from his previous business associates. Tonight was supposed to be us moving forward, not the past catching up." Agent Chen studied her for a long moment. "You seem like a smart woman, Mrs. Vale. Smart enough to know what kind of business your husband has been involved in. I know what kind of man my husband is trying to become. That's what matters to me." "Fair enough." The agent stood. "For what it's worth, the evidence supports self-defense. Carlo Lazzaro was armed. He breached your home violently, and he clearly intended lethal harm. Your husband defending himself and his property is legally justified." She paused. "But there will be additional investigations into his business dealings, his associates, the empire he's built. If you're smart, you'll cooperate. Make it clear you're victims of Carlo's vendetta, not participants in the system that created it." It was advice wrapped as warning. Elena nodded slowly. "We'll cooperate. Marcus has already committed to complete transparency. We want this life behind us." "I hope that's true, for your sake and your baby's." Agent Chen glanced at Elena's stomach. "Congratulations, by the way. Despite everything, that's still something to celebrate." She walked away, leaving Elena alone with the ruins of their old life and the terrifying uncertainty of what came next. Dawn broke over the city, painting the devastation in harsh morning light. Marcus emerged from his house with his lawyer, his arm in a proper sling now, his face exhausted but determined. He found Elena immediately, crossed to her like she was magnetic north. "How's the baby?" he asked. "Fine. We're both fine, physically." Elena touched his face, careful of the bruises forming. "How are you?" "Honestly? Relieved, terrified, but mostly relieved." Marcus pulled her close with his good arm. "This could have gone so much worse. If Carlo had gotten to you, but he didn't. Your security held. You protected us." She leaned into him, exhausted. "What happens now?" "Now we cooperate with investigators, document everything about the attack, and prove this was self-defense." Marcus's lawyer spoke up, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Flores. "The evidence is overwhelming. Carlo Lazzaro escaped federal custody, armed himself, recruited accomplices, and assaulted your home with clear intent to kill." Mr. Vale's response was proportionate and legally justified. "What about the FBI investigations Agent Chen mentioned?" Patricia's expression tightened. "Those are more complicated. They'll use this incident as justification to examine Mr. Vale's entire business history. We'll fight it where we can, cooperate where we must, and minimize exposure to prosecution wherever possible." "I don't want to minimize exposure," Marcus said. "I want to come clean. About everything." Patricia looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Marcus, I strongly advise against—" "I'm not asking for advice on this. I'm telling you what's happening." Marcus's voice was firm, despite his exhaustion. I'm done building my life on secrets and lies. If the FBI wants to investigate, they can investigate. I'll give them access to every business record, every financial document, every detail of how my empire was structured. And in exchange, I want complete immunity for Elena. Whatever they find, she knew nothing and is charged with nothing. That's the deal. Non-negotiable. That's not how immunity works, Patricia protested. You can't just, then make it how it works. You're one of the best lawyers in the state. Figure it out. Marcus met her eyes. I've spent 15 years building an empire. I can spend the next 15 undoing the damage it caused. But my wife and my child pay no price for my choices. That's the line. Patricia looked between them, clearly recognizing this was a battle she wouldn't win. I'll see what I can do. But Marcus, understand that full transparency could mean prison time for you. Years of it, potentially. I understand. Marcus glanced at Elena. And I'm okay with that. If that's the price for giving my family a clean start, I'll pay it. Elena felt tears building. This wasn't the deal she wanted. Marcus in prison, their child visiting him behind glass. But she also understood what he was offering. Complete honesty, complete accountability. A genuine chance to break free from the violence and corruption that had defined his life. Let's take this one step at a time, she said. First we get through today, then we figure out tomorrow. They spent the day giving statements, answering questions, watching investigators document every detail of the attack. Carlo Lazaro and 3 of his accomplices were dead. 2 more were in custody, singing about Carlo's plan in exchange for reduced sentences. The picture that emerged was clear. A vendetta years in the making, an escape planned with inside help, an assault intended to kill Marcus and anyone who got in the way. Self-defense. Legally, morally, obviously self-defense. But the investigation didn't end with Carlo's death. FBI agents served warrants for business records. Financial analysts began dissecting transactions. Associates were brought in for questioning. The empire Marcus had built was being dismantled by federal investigators with the same ruthless efficiency he'd used to construct it. By evening, Marcus and Elena sat in the ruins of their living room. Insurance would cover repairs, Patricia assured them, though it would take months. For now, the house was uninhabitable. They'd be staying at a hotel while cleanup happened. I never wanted you to see this side of my life, Marcus said, looking around at the destruction. This is exactly what I tried to protect you from. By hiding it? By pretending it didn't exist? Elena shook her head. Marcus, I'd rather see the ugly truth than live in beautiful lies. At least now I understand what we're actually dealing with. What we're dealing with is the collapse of everything I built. By this time next month, I'll probably be under indictment. By this time next year, I could be in prison. He took her hand. That's not the future I promised you. No, but it's an honest future. One where we face consequences instead of running from them. Elena squeezed his fingers. And whatever happens, we face it together. That was the promise. Presence, transparency, choosing each other. You've kept that promise even when it cost you everything else. Marcus pulled her close, careful of his injured ribs and her pregnant belly. They sat there in the wreckage, holding on to each other while their world restructured around them. The next months unfolded with brutal efficiency. The FBI investigation was exhaustive, but Marcus's cooperation was complete. He gave them everything: financial records, business contacts, details of operations that had been shut down months before. In exchange, Elena received formal immunity from any charges related to his business dealings. Marcus wasn't as fortunate. Federal prosecutors filed charges on multiple counts: racketeering, money laundering, illegal gambling operations, bribery of public officials. Patricia negotiated the best deal she could manage: 7 years in federal prison in exchange for full cooperation and testimony against still active criminal organizations. 7 years. Their daughter would be in 2nd grade before her father came home. Elena cried when Marcus accepted the deal. Not because she disagreed, it was the best outcome they could hope for, but because the reality of his absence hit her with devastating force. 7 years of raising their child alone, 7 years of prison visits and monitored phone calls, and explaining to their daughter why Daddy couldn't come home. "I'm so sorry," Marcus said, holding her in Patricia's office after the deal was signed. "This isn't what you signed up for." Neither was 6 years of emotional neglect, Elena managed through tears. But we survived that. We'll survive this too. How can you still believe in us? Because you chose us. When it mattered most, when Carlo Lazzaro was breaching our home, and you could have run or hidden or protected yourself first, you chose us. She touched his face. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. Their daughter was born 3 months later, 6 weeks before Marcus's sentencing date. Elena named her Sophia Grace Vale, and when Marcus held her for the first time in the hospital, Elena watched him transform completely. The empire builder disappeared. The ruthless negotiator vanished. What remained was just a man, broken with love for the tiny life in his arms. She's perfect, Marcus whispered. She's absolutely perfect. She looks like you, Elena said. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Poor kid. But Marcus was smiling through tears. Sophia, it means wisdom. Appropriate for someone who's going to grow up smarter than both her parents combined. They had 3 precious months together before sentencing. Marcus sold everything, the mansion, the cars, the expensive art and jewelry, and trappings of the empire he'd built. The money went into legitimate trust funds for Sophia's education and Elena's security. He kept enough to pay his legal debts and nothing more. I don't need anything from that life, he told Elena when she protested the complete liquidation. I'm starting over. When I get out, I want to build something clean, something our daughter can be proud of. The sentencing hearing was quiet, almost anticlimactic. Marcus pled guilty to all charges, expressed genuine remorse, and received the agreed-upon 7 years. Elena sat in the gallery holding 6-month-old Sophia, watching the man she loved accept the consequences of 15 years of choices. The judge seemed sympathetic. Mr. Vale, I've reviewed your cooperation with federal investigators. You've provided information that's led to the prosecution of significantly more dangerous criminals. You've liquidated your assets and made genuine efforts to make amends. For what it's worth, I believe your remorse is real. Thank you, Your Honor, Marcus said quietly. That said, you built an empire on illegal activity that harmed this city for over a decade. 7 years is appropriate for the crimes you've committed. I hope you use that time to continue the transformation you've begun. The judge's gaze moved to Elena and Sophia. And I hope your family is still waiting when you come home. They will be, Marcus said, with certainty Elena felt in her bones. The first year was the hardest. Elena moved to a modest house in the suburbs. Nothing like the mansion, but warm and bright and filled with Sophia's laughter. She returned to teaching, found joy in working with kids again, slowly rebuilt a life that didn't revolve around being Mrs. Marcus Vale, crime boss's wife. She visited Marcus every week, bringing Sophia despite the difficulty of prison visits with a baby. Marcus devoured every detail of their daughter's development. First words, first steps, first tooth. He took college courses through the prison education program, worked in the library, stayed out of trouble. I'm becoming the person I should have been all along, he told Elena during one visit. Someone who reads philosophy instead of plotting territory expansion. Someone who thinks about ethics instead of strategy. I'm proud of you, Elena said. And she meant it. The years passed. Sophia grew from baby to toddler to bright, curious little girl who knew her daddy was away but would come home someday. Elena created a life that was full and meaningful, teaching, friends, a support system that wasn't based on Marcus's empire. She was happy, or as happy as someone could be with their husband in prison. And then, 6 months early for good behavior and exemplary rehabilitation, Marcus came home. Elena brought Sophia to the prison gates on release day. Their daughter was 6.5 now, smart as a whip, and skeptical of the man she'd only known through supervised visits. Marcus walked out in jeans and a t-shirt, carrying everything he owned in a single bag, and saw his family waiting. The emotion on his face was almost too raw to witness. Sophia, he said, kneeling to her level, I'm your dad, and I know you don't really know me, but I'd like to change that, if you'll let me. Sophia studied him seriously, then looked at Elena. Is he nice? He's trying to be, Elena said. Give him a chance. See what you think. Their daughter considered this, then nodded. Okay, but I get to decide if you can live with us. Mom says that's how families work now. Everyone gets a vote. Marcus laughed, the sound rusty from disuse but genuine. That's absolutely fair. I'll earn your vote. The first months of reintegration were awkward. Marcus found work at a nonprofit helping formerly incarcerated people find employment, using his strategic mind for good instead of empire building. He rented an apartment near Elena's house rather than assuming he could move back in. He courted his wife like they were dating again, building trust through consistency and presence. And slowly, carefully, they became a family. Sophia's vote came 6 months after Marcus's release, delivered at the dinner table with all the seriousness of a Supreme Court ruling. I think Dad should live with us. He's been nice, and he makes Mom happy, and he reads bedtime stories better than anyone. Elena's eyes met Marcus's across the table. 7 years apart. 7 years of growth and change and learning who they were without each other. 7 years that had nearly destroyed them, but somehow, impossibly, had made them stronger. I agree, Elena said softly. If Dad wants to move in, I think that would be good. I want to, Marcus said. More than anything, but only if you're sure. Both of you. I'm sure, Elena said. And she was. They renewed their vows on what would have been their 14th anniversary, in a simple ceremony with just Sophia and a handful of friends. No expensive venue, no designer dress, no champagne or caviar. Just honest promises spoken in a garden while their daughter watched, solemn and hopeful. I promise to choose you, Marcus said, holding Elena's hands. Every single day. In crisis and in calm. When it's easy and when it's hard. You and Sophia are my empire now, the only one that matters. I promise to hold you accountable, Elena said, to call you on it when you slip, to be your partner, not just your wife, to build a life together instead of just existing in the same space. I promise to earn your trust, Marcus continued, every single day, through actions, not words, through presence, not promises. I promise to believe in you, Elena whispered, even when it's scary, even when I'm not sure. To have faith that people can change if they want it badly enough. They kissed while Sophia cheered, and Elena felt something settle in her chest that had been displaced for years. Peace, hope, the genuine belief that they were going to make it. Marcus started a small consulting business, helping legitimate companies with strategic planning, using his empire-building skills for legal purposes. Elena was promoted to assistant principal at her school. Sophia thrived, bright and happy, and utterly unaware that her father had once been one of the most feared men in the city. On what would have been their 15th anniversary, Marcus and Elena stood in the kitchen of their modest suburban home, nothing like the mansion, but infinitely warmer, and looked at the life they'd built from ruins. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked. Giving up the empire? The power? Every day I remember what I had, Marcus said, and every day I'm grateful I lost it. Because what I have now is worth more than anything I built before. He pulled her close. I was a king of nothing, Elena. An empire of violence and corruption and hollow victories. Now I'm just a man, a husband, a father, and that's the richest I've ever been. That's very poetic. I had 7 years to practice my speeches. He kissed her forehead. But I mean it. Losing the empire gave me back my humanity, gave me you and Sophia. Gave me a chance to be someone worth being instead of just someone powerful. They stood there in their quiet kitchen while their daughter did homework in the next room, while the city they'd once lived in fear of continued its indifferent spin, while the future stretched out uncertain but theirs to shape. Marcus had lost everything, his empire, his power, his freedom for 7 years. But standing here with Elena in his arms and Sophia's laughter drifting through the house, he understood what he'd actually gained. A family who chose him daily, a wife who believed in his capacity to change, a daughter who knew him as dad, not as a crime boss or empire builder, or anything except the man who read her bedtime stories and helped with math homework. The empire he'd spent 15 years building had meant nothing. This small, imperfect, achingly beautiful life meant everything. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus Vale was home. Not in a mansion that felt like a prison. Not in power that required constant vigilance, but in the arms of a woman who'd seen him at his worst and believed in his best. In the love of a daughter who gave him purpose beyond profit. In a life built on honesty instead of lies, presence instead of distance, love instead of control. It wasn't the empire he'd imagined when he married Elena 15 years ago. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And standing there on Christmas Eve, exactly 15 years after Elena had signed divorce papers and walked out of his life, Marcus held his wife close and felt grateful beyond words that she'd given him a second chance, that she'd fought for them when he'd almost given up, that she'd believed transformation was possible even when he doubted it himself. "I love you," he whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "I love you too," Elena said. "Thank you for finally showing up." Their daughter called from the living room, wanting help hanging ornaments on the tree they'd decorated together. Marcus and Elena exchanged a look, the kind of wordless communication that only comes from years of choosing each other daily, and went to join Sophia. Outside, snow began to fall on a city that had forgotten Marcus Vale had ever been anyone important. Inside their home, a family celebrated Christmas with cheap wine and homemade cookies, and the kind of love that couldn't be bought or built or controlled. Just earned, day by day, choice by choice, moment by imperfect moment. And in the end, that was the only empire that mattered, the only one worth building, the only one that could never be taken away.